Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to On Her Side. Today I have my guest with me, Daniyah Yaqoob sahiba. Daniyah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah for taking the time to come on to the program today.
Of course, I'm honored to be.
I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation, inshallah. We're talking about a technology today that is inevitably embedded in all facets of our life, but it is something that we don't necessarily maybe know everything there is to know about, and where there are many benefits, there's also, of course, challenges and potential harms. We're talking about AI. How much do you use AI?
I have to be honest, at first I was hesitant about it, but nowadays I find that AI, obviously it's embedded itself into many facets of our lives. So I'd even risk it to say that almost every single day I'm having some sort of interaction with artificial intelligence. Intentionally, I'll seek it out every once in a while.
Yeah, so let's start with the basics. Let's start with definitions. What does AI mean?
Yeah, so AI stands for artificial intelligence, and essentially it's a technology that enables machines to simulate human learning, human processing, human decision-making. And it's something that's been around for a while, since back in the 1950s, and we don't always realize we're in.
Yeah, we tend to think of AI as something that's just brand new. It's just arrived.
Yeah, for sure, and it hasn't. Yeah. I think of the earliest example that I can think of is when we go online and we look to play chess with a computer. What you're really playing against is an artificial intelligence machine who's designed to think like you do, and make decisions like you do.
And we've been playing these games for a very long time. So definitely. When we talk about AI, we know that there's a large sector of the industry that has been using this technology for some time now. And then, of course, there's the personal sort of individual use of artificial intelligence, which we'll get to in a second. But maybe you can talk a little bit about how different sectors of the industry are using it.
Yeah, so I think one of the big ones that comes to my mind is healthcare right now. That's something that I'm incredibly interested in, is how artificial intelligence is playing a role in the healthcare industry. We see all the way from diagnosing patients with different illnesses to the patient-physician interaction, artificial intelligence has a role to play in each of these different aspects of healthcare. One of the things I've been looking into recently is how AI is helping find a cure for diseases like Alzheimer's, which humans have struggled with for a very long time. And so we're bringing artificial intelligence into the picture to help us to discover drugs and other things that could potentially work to, find a cure for this pertinent disease. Additionally, something that I came across recently, a family member of mine had a surgery in the recent weeks. And following the surgery, usually you'll get a call from a physician, a doctor, and they'll be like, how are you healing? How are things going? They got a call from an artificial intelligence machine they called Dora.
Okay.
And they said, talk to Dora like she's a human. Talk to Dora as if you would talk to another physician. Tell her about the symptoms that you're having. And so in this way as well, that's taken away a role of a doctor previously to interact with their patients, and now artificial intelligence is coming in for that.
Yeah, and you mentioned healthcare, so I actually recently found out that there is this app that someone has created. You mentioned, having a follow-up appointment with like a bot or an AI element. There's this app that they've created where you know how every time you walk into a doctor's office, there's a history that they take, right? Like a medical history they take. They've actually trained this app to kind of ask you all of those basic foundational questions that a nurse would ask, or a junior doctor would ask you about how you're feeling, what brings you in, and all of those things. And then they've actually trained it so that depending on whatever you say, they know what to follow up with. So basically by the time, and it's like 10 minutes or so it takes, by the time the doctor comes in to see you, they actually have like a summary generated for them, and they don't have to spend as much time talking to you about like what brings you in, how are you feeling, that type of thing. But then of course, where there's efficiency and benefit, there's also loss of that human element, right?
Definitely. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns that I initially had surrounding AI was just, being human is such a unique, experience. Each of us face it in our own ways, and talking to other people, generates new ideas in us, and that interaction with one another, I think, is super important. And so one of the initial concerns I had was how much of that is artificial intelligence going to take away from us?
Yeah. So you mentioned, loss of that human touch, that human element. We've been hearing a lot about generative AI these days. What is that?
Yeah, so generative AI is essentially when the computer or the machine has been trained to create content on its own. So whether that's photos, whether that's videos, whether that's text, what artificial intelligence does is it trains off of existing databases and then creates its own original content per se.
And that can be quite, I think, confusing and harmful in a number of different ways. Talking about generative AI, so I know that a lot of students these days are using this technology, holding it quite close to them and relying on it in some cases. I teach at the university, and I know that our organization has put out a statement regarding the use of AI in academic work. You're a student as well at a university. How do you see your peers using it? And in your case, how do you utilize it?
Yeah, so AI is something I think that is rapidly changing the academic sector. It's something that, especially generative AI, was totally, unanticipated by a lot of professors, and so they had to do a quick pivot to respond to students using artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I'm a journalism student, and so a lot of that includes writing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't particularly enjoy the process of writing, and so that's where artificial intelligence comes in for them. It's about giving a prompt to whatever chatbot it is and saying something like, I'm writing a breaking news article on a bus crash, give me a headline for it, and allowing the AI to write that for you. Myself, I've used AI not to do my work on that level, but to explain concepts to me.
Okay.
I had an exam recently for an English class, and for that class we had to read so many difficultly worded articles and papers. And one of them in particular was by a French philosopher. And I have to be honest, everything he wrote in there sort of went over my head at the first read. I did whatever I could on Google to find summaries on what he was talking about, and it just didn't click. And so I finally decided to go to AI, and I put in the article and I was like, explain this to me if like I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And so the AI gave me that summary, and it said, here's what this French philosopher is talking about. And then I was able to use that knowledge and incorporate it into my notes and understand it a lot better.
But what's your level of trust in what's being put out by the AI platform?
That's a good question. I'd have to give another example for that. Early on in one of my journalism classes, we were told to experiment with AI. And one of the things we experimented with was finding sources. That's a big part of the journalism industry, is finding people to talk to for articles. And so I said to AI, I'm writing a story on this topic, find me sources for it. It made a lot of the sources up. And so I have to say, it's still an emerging technology. And so humans need to be very much on guard of what the AI is telling us.
Yeah, I saw a story posted by somebody where they were talking about how they actually published a paper. They managed to publish this manuscript in a medical journal, and then somebody, dug a little bit or was going to cite that particular paper or however it was, but then it came to light that all of the references that were in that paper were made up.
Wow.
Because that scientist had actually utilized AI to generate the paper itself, like the manuscript. So all of the citations there, and then everything that was listed in the reference section to correspond, was completely fake.
Yeah.
There were no studies by that name. There were no authors by that name. And then it came to light about how it just magnifies how discerning you have to be as a consumer.
Definitely.
Right?
And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Something new that I think everybody comes into contact with every single day now is we all do Google searches regularly. Google has introduced its AI feature now. And so every time you do a Google search, you might notice that Google's AI, it's called Gemini, it does a little summary for you of all the web pages that have come up.
Yes.
And a lot of people have found those summaries to be inaccurate as well. So for instance, if you're asking Google, I'm having a cold, what should I do about it? It's entirely possible that the AI summary gives you the wrong instructions. And a lot of people think AI is, the be-all, end-all of everything. But what they have to realize is we still need humans to fact check and research everything that AI.
Yeah, I think they even give you a little blurb at the end where they say that like this may be wrong or something, and please check it, and that type of thing. It's very, very important. So we were talking about how the healthcare industry has been embedding AI so heavily in its operations. Another area which I hear about very often is human resources and talent management. And I heard this story recently about how there are many now employers that are looking to incorporate AI in their hiring processes. And basically this technology is used to screen CVs and resumes that are coming in a neutral way. So they're kind of training the AI technology to screen based on some words, etc., and masking and blinding the names of the applicants so that HR and the individuals who are going to be involved in the hiring process are not biased towards promoting, the applications of certain individuals whom they are perhaps more geared towards. So while I think in theory and concept this is really good and it is a very productive use, but I feel like there is a balance because AI is also being trained by humans, right? And humans do have biases. They have unconscious biases, and they subscribe to so many stereotypes unconsciously, unknowingly. So how do you strike this balance of AI helping you in a neutral way, yet being trained by individuals who are naturally going to be biased?
Definitely. I think it goes two ways. I think we have to be super mindful about what the intentions are of those who are developing certain AI models, what agendas they have on the side. But at the same time, as much as we analyze that, I think we also need to be wary of just how much of AI has already been trained on the existing data. I remember early on when generative AI was first at its peak, a lot of what I saw on the internet was people going to these AI models and asking them questions like, generate an image of a doctor. And what the AI would do is they would generate images of male doctors.
Of a man, yes.
And then generate an image of a nurse. And what they would generate are images of female, of women. Because that's the data that AI has been trained off of. That's the data that was made available to an AI. And so I think it goes both ways. I think what it needs to go back to is who's developing these AI systems, what agendas do they have, and then as we get to this idea of regulation, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, is how do we ensure that AI becomes more impartial and is a tool for equity and equality rather than for discrimination?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit about not trusting all of the output that AI gives you. Of course, in this day and age, just because AI is so prevalent, it's very difficult to discern what's fake and what's not. And you talked about images being created by AI based on prompts. There are, we know, images out there that purport to be certain individuals, which they're not. They're completely fake photos, completely fake videos, completely fake news in a way that are generated by technology. And it goes back to what you're saying about the intent of the creator. So what is their intent? How ethical is their intent? And what are they going to be using it for? It's really difficult these days to see what's real and what's not.
So I think what ends up happening is people assign a lot of credibility to machines over humans. They believe that because it's a machine, it's probably more objective, it's probably more accurate than a human could be. And that's something that becomes especially hard to distinguish between for younger people, for children, for vulnerable people, especially those who are facing mental health struggles, for instance. It's unfortunate in our society, we don't necessarily always have the frameworks or the structures to help people who, are going through mental health challenges or struggles. And so with the rise of generative AI, what's ended up happening is a lot of people are turning to these AI systems instead to find someone to connect to find support, to find, relatability somewhere. I know people who say they treat AI as their therapist.
Yeah.
They log on and they say, hey, I've been having a tough day. Give me some advice. Tell me what to do.
That's like a whole new level of crazy to me.
Yeah,
personally.
absolutely. It takes away that layer of human connection. And while these are smaller examples, there have also been a lot more serious cases of what that could look like. In Florida recently, a case had come out of a 14-year-old boy who had started a conversation with an AI chatbot who had taken on the persona of a TV show character. And so this young child who is in a vulnerable position, he believed entirely that he was talking to that TV show character that he loved so much. And throughout the course of their conversation, he professed this undying love, and the AI chatbot reciprocated that. The AI chatbot said, I want you to be with me. I want you to connect with me. And this child, unable to decipher between the fact that this is not a real person, this is a machine, I guess couldn't take the toll of that, and it led to a point where that boy ended up committing suicide and taking his own life. His parents are now suing the AI system that led to that. And it just speaks to this broader conversation on the safety precautions that surround AI. How much are we taking into consideration how AI can affect us physically in the real world as well? These are conversations that haven't started happening as often as they should yet, but it's something that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just, linking it with mental health as well, talking about deception and mental health, we know that the rise, the very rapid rise of AI-driven filters, for example, have created these idealized versions of unrealistic and unattainable beauty standards, right? We know that there are so many images out there, so many applications where you can do before and after imagery, which is completely unreal. But then for the user and for the audience, for the viewer, it makes it look like it is, in fact. And it just makes you want to achieve that state of after, whatever that is in terms of beauty, right? And it's just I think it's just such a deadly cycle of what was already a pressure-filled society and life for women anyway, given social media, given media, and the push from society to be this idealistic version of beautiful. And you were talking about giving prompts to the generative AI technology and saying, create an image of a doctor, a nurse, a surgeon. There's this article that I was reading about how a prompt was given to AI to say, create an image of the most beautiful woman in the world. And what you saw was those idealistic standards that everybody subscribes to, the Eurocentric version of beauty, was what was created. And so it once again also links back that AI is also being trained by humans. So if the humans feel that this is the traditional, this is the perfect image of what beauty is and beautiful women look like, then that is exactly what you're now perpetuating and promoting through the AI technology.
Definitely. And I think it's honestly quite scary how often I will scroll through social media and I will see these people with beautifully flawless skin, with absolutely no,
Flaws,
acne scars, no flaws,
weaknesses.
no nothing.
Yes.
And how many times it's hard for me to decipher whether that's AI, is that an AI filter, or is that reality?
Yeah.
But
at least you're asking the question.
But at least I'm asking the question.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people who
Yes.
don't.
Yes.
And that's where the concern comes
and that's where it goes back to your point about vulnerable people, right? So anybody can become vulnerable. It depends on what it is that they're trying to attain, what they're after. If they're trying to find out more information about what beauty is and how can they be beautiful, they're automatically vulnerable to whatever output is coming their way, right? So also just to finish off, I've also learned about some beauty brands that are actively taking steps to promote authentic, diverse, individuals in their campaigns to kind of overcome this new sort of technology that kind of makes everybody look the same exact way, and everyone's perfect with no flaws. Like, there is the good and bad in everything, as we know.
Absolutely.
But as we've talked about a little bit, the safety, the trust, and the ethics behind the use of any technology, and in particular AI, What kind of regulations exist right now, whether in Canada or in other places, around the use of AI?
So artificial intelligence is in its current form emerging still. So around the world, there isn't actually a lot of frameworks to regulate or deal with AI. Canada itself doesn't have any regulations on artificial intelligence. In Ontario, we talked about hiring processes earlier. Ontario has made it mandatory that businesses disclose when they're using AI in the hiring process. The European Union at the moment is trying to work towards creating legislation on AI. However, nothing exists right now. And I think that's for two reasons. One, we already have existing social media legislation, so a lot of the reliance is on that currently. But also, we don't fully understand what form or what shape AI is going to take on in the future. Again, it's something that's constantly evolving, and so governments are watching, but nothing's set in stone yet. As Ahmadis, we're so grateful to have the institution of Khilafat, which is constantly guiding us. Many years ago, Hazrat Alabi's helper told Ahmadi women, he advised Ahmadi women that we should abstain from posting our photos on social media, whether that's of our faces, a part of our face, of our hands, no matter what it is. With the rise of generative AI now, we understand how that was so wise beyond its years. We're understanding how images can be taken and manipulated in every which way, turned into something that they totally weren't at the beginning.
Transformed, yeah, totally
Absolutely.
transformed.
And so more recently, with regards to artificial intelligence, Hazrat Alabi's helper has advised us that nothing is inherently good and nothing is inherently bad. The same goes for AI. It's up to humans how we use technologies like these for what purposes. He's told us that AI could be entirely beneficial if it's used to benefit humanity, if we use it properly. But at the same time, he has warned that there are misuses of AI, that we should refrain from spreading misinformation through AI. And so his bottom line essentially is that humans, we need to be wary, we need to be vigilant, and we need to constantly revise what AI is telling us.
Yeah, and to be sure that, for example, when somebody puts in some search terms and wants to prompt AI to give us some information, let's say about Ahmadiyyat or the true Islam, etc., that the correct and accurate information is coming out, and that's up to us to make sure that is happening.
Absolutely.
As an individual, I think it falls upon us as women, it falls upon us to take on responsibility for our own actions. Like you said, everything can become good if you use it to promote good, and everything can become bad if you're using it for the wrong reasons. And as women, as individuals, citizens of the world, really it's up to us to think about the ramifications and consequences of what we're doing, whether it's right now or it's for the future as well.
Yeah, and I recently came across the most interesting research, which talked about the future ramifications of artificial intelligence. We've talked a lot about what it means in the present to use AI, but what does it mean for the future? And so I've come across research on the environmental impacts of artificial intelligence. We might think of artificial intelligence as some machinery, it's up in the clouds, it's got nothing to do with our environment, but that is, the wrong perspective to take. Artificial intelligence uses almost 10 times more electricity than a Google search in some cases.
Wow.
So if you go to an artificial intelligence system and you ask it a question, that will use 10 times more electricity than having gone to Google and asking it the exact same question.
And you were saying nobody uses Google anymore.
And nobody uses Google anymore. People jump straight to artificial intelligence to answer its questions. And so that's something we need to think about. And then I think the even more harrowing impact, something that I know had me gobsmacked, I had to sit and reflect, is that globally, artificial intelligence systems can end up using 6 times more water than the entire country of Denmark.
Water.
Okay,
how?
And it's essentially what artificial intelligence systems use are data servers. And these data servers heat up quite quickly. And so what they need is water to cool them down. And I'm not talking about any water. I'm talking about fresh, clean drinking water, because minerals in water can end up corroding data servers. And so what these artificial intelligence systems need are the clean drinking water that we need,
that we're already running out of on this planet. Yes.
In order to cool their servers down. And so it's a question worth asking, like, what cost are we willing to take on in order to use artificial intelligence? How far are we willing to go for this?
And how is this planet paying for our use of technology and our innovations.
Yeah, it's just again, like this idea of moderation in Islam, right? Using everything as much as it needs to be. We're already seeing, an over-reliance on artificial intelligence as it is. But these are the bigger questions that we need to take into consideration. How is artificial intelligence impacting our minds? How is it impacting our bodies? How is it impacting the world that we live in?
Yeah, absolutely. Something to keep in mind and to reflect on, certainly. And I think to recognize that the creation can never be better than the creator.
Beautiful.
Allah Almighty is the creator of all things. And AI, at the end of the day, is a technology that is created and powered by humans. And so for sure, there are flaws and weaknesses that exist within it. And this over-reliance that we seem to have quickly on AI and its technology is something to be very vigilant about, because with human created systems there are always flaws and weaknesses, and they can be used detrimentally. And so to make sure that we are utilizing this technology for the betterment of everyone.
Yeah, it's key to remember artificial intelligence is artificial. It's in the name.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it is artificial. Jazakallah for the conversation. I know personally I have learned so much today. Jazakallah for taking the time to be with us today.
Jazakallah.
Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.